Hey everybody, how you doing? It's Max, Chief Evangelist over here at Hapily. In our last video about Event Hapily, we gave you a preview of the beta and how you can go create events, create registration pages dynamically, sign people up for those events, and actually track attendance, whether it's for an in-person, virtual, or hybrid event that you're running and you're using HubSpot to manage the whole thing. What we didn't get into is email communications, and that's something that Event Hapily makes super easy when we harness the power of HubSpot. So let me show you how we can build very simple emails that we can send out to people once they register for an event, and then I'll show you some other examples of other emails that you can power for all of your event comms using Event Hapily. So I'm starting here in a workflow because we told you about this create registrant workflow action that we have that creates registration objects and associates them to events, sessions, as well as the contact. It also associates the contacts to your event and sessions. And that's important because you'll use that when you're building any sort of email workflows off of the event, registration, or session objects, right? But I'm going to show you a really easy email that you can make today because of a very cool hidden thing that this create registrant action does. Now, when a contact goes through a workflow and it creates a registrant object for them for a session or event that they signed up, something that we also do in the back end is we have a bunch of contact properties that we inject that hold information about the latest session and the event that they had just signed up for through one of those forms. So we have a whole bunch of Hapily event information as well as Hapily session information that sits on the contact record. So what happens is when a registrant object gets created or updated for someone when they sign up for an event, what the workflow action also does, besides the object creation and association, is that it will actually take properties from the event as well as the session, and it will dump those in to a contact record so you can use those to create some easy contact tokens in your emails that you're sending out to people when they sign up for sessions. This way, you can trigger it off of contact records changing each time they sign up for a new session instead of building them off the individual session records themselves. Now, you still may use those for sending off different emails. So say, for example, a session ends and you have a recording link you want to send out to people, you would use it for that. But in this case, where people are signing up for multiple sessions, you can trigger it right off the contact record itself. Now, let me show you an example of one of these emails. So I created a very simple session registration email. And if I come into here, you can take a look at what we're doing. So the way I set this up is that every single time someone actually registers for a session, it will populate a whole bunch of these properties in an email. And I'll show you how I'm going to send this email in a moment, but I just want to show you how easy it is to use these properties. Right here, we're bringing in the email that has their first name in it. So it says, hey, first name, thanks so much for signing up for whatever the latest registered session name is, right? As well as the start time, the event date, the latest registration session room, if you're using that room field that we provide on those session objects. And then I'm bringing information in about the event, right? So I'm using the address from the event level record itself versus the individual session records. Now, if you have individual session records that have different addresses, let's say you're doing a conference and there's a bunch of places around town where you're holding sessions, you can bring in the address from those individual sessions. However, in our case, everything's happening in the same spot. So we're just pulling it in from the event session so we don't have to update all the addresses on each individual session that we create for that event, right? So you can use event level information or session level information. Now, the other cool thing about this workflow action is that every single time someone signs up for a registration, it will actually clear all of these fields as well. That way, when you're using these personalization tokens, if there's a session that doesn't change the value when that happens, it'll wipe it clear so you don't accidentally bring in properties from a previous session that they had signed up for instead of the current one that they had just signed up for, right? So we clear these properties before we update them, just so you're not sending any weird personalization tokens. Now, let me show you how I'm actually sending this. I've created an email here for in-person sessions, and then I have another one that I'll show you that's very similar for when these sessions are virtual. So we're using Zoom webinar in this scenario. And what it's doing in this case is instead of sending information about a physical address, we're sending over a meeting link and an ICS calendar link, all generated from the Zoom webinar integration that we have. Zoom meetings work too as well, as long as there's a registration element to them. And again, with our Zoom integration, those events and sessions are created for you automatically when you set them up in Zoom the first time. right? Now, how do we actually send a different version depending on if it's a virtual event or an in-person event when someone signs up? Let me show you a really quick contact workflow that I've created. So I'm going to come back into workflows here, and I have this workflow that I built called send registration confirmation email. The way this works is when we see a contact, this is a contact level workflow, when we see the property name of latest registered session name change, each time that happens, I'm enrolling someone in the workflow. The reason I'm looking for that property to change specifically is I know that that's one of the properties that will always get updated every single time someone registers for a session. So if there's a new value in that property, the only reason that there would be is that they had just signed up and got registered for a session. So it's a very reliable property to use to trigger these workflows each time you want to send it out, which would be anytime someone registers for a session. So what I'm doing in this case is I'm deploying a very simple if-then branch after the workflow starts. And what I'm doing is I'm looking for the property of latest registration session meeting link to be known. That is only going to happen when this session is delivered via a Zoom webinar, right? Because that is a session property that gets updated. Therefore, when someone signs up for it, it gets brought over onto the contact record itself. So it checks to see if there is a meeting link in there. You could do this in probably a bunch of different ways, but this is like the simplest out of the box way to do it. And then from this, I'm branching to send either the virtual event thank you email or the in-person email if there's not a meeting link present. So I'm just sending either the session registration in-person email or the session registration Zoom meeting email, and it's that simple. Let me give you another example of how you could use this. Let's say, for example, you want to be able to send out a recording link after a virtual session is complete. Keep in mind, if you create recording links for in-person sessions, you can simply just grab that link and paste it into the session record, and this will work all the same. So right here, I have a session-based workflow, right? So it's a workflow that is surrounding the actual session object itself. And the way that it's getting enrolled is it's just looking for that recording link property on the session record to be known. I'm not setting up re-enrollment in this case because theoretically you'd only do this for a session once, because the session can only be completed once and you're only going to have one recording link for it generally, right? So as soon as there is a value in that recording property, and you could add like another property that would like say, you know, trigger sending out recording link equals yes, and make it more of like a manual thing. So it's like if you just want to wait until maybe you edit the recording or something along those lines before you send it, you could add an extra property here that it looks for. Again, we're taking advantage of HubSpot's extensive object flexibility here, so you can kind of iterate this on however you want, right? But what it's doing in this case is it's sending an email that has the recording link in it for folks who attended, right? So in this case, if I go take a peek at this email, I'm just changing up the verbiage a little bit depending on if they attend or if they don't attend. So here it says, hey, thanks for your attending session name. If you ever want to access the recording, you can find it here, and it drops in that recording link from the session object itself. Now, it's important to know that the way HubSpot works is that you can only use custom object personalization tokens when the workflow is that same type, right? So it's important to send this from session-centered workflows, right? So in this case, it's saying, hey, thanks for attending, and it's sending the recording link. And then the other thing that I'm doing is I have a second action here for a did not attend email template, right? And I'm just changing up the verbiage. I'm saying, hey, sorry, we missed you for whatever the session name is. Don't worry, you can access the recording here, right? So I want to have a different message depending on if they attended or not. Now the question is, how do I know if they attended or not? Well, when it comes to something like Zoom, Zoom's integration actually will apply a label to the contact record to session level relationship, right? So we're coming out of the registrant object. We're looking at the relationship between the contact and that session itself. If they did attend to the session, Zoom will tell us and apply a contact attended session label. If they did not attend to the Zoom webinar, it will add a contact did not attend session label. And what that enables us to do is get hyper targeted in the way that we send these emails out based on that association label on if they attended or not. And again, we're updating this automatically, which is the best part. So here, what we're doing is we're saying, hey, send the email for attended when we're sending the recording link, but only send it to people who are associated to the session with the attended session label. That way it's only going to send it to people who actually attended the session. And then down here, we're saying if they did not attend the session, right? Send this specific did not attend session recording link email to contacts who have the contact did not attend session association label, right? And it's that easy. And all these different objects have their own use cases for email, right? Maybe you want to do a pre-event level email where you're sending it out to everyone with the association label of registered, right? You can hyper target the registered folks. That way you're not sending any like pre-event emails to folks who have contacts associated to events that are just like people that you're working with to coordinate the event, for example, right? And then at the same time, if you want to be able to see if they did or didn't attend the event, you can do that at the event level, session level, registrant level, etc. So all these different objects have their own use case for pre-event comms, in-flight event comms, post-event comms. And again, the beauty of HubSpot is you can customize it however you need to based on the way you structure your events, because we're putting everything into HubSpot as objects. You can have custom properties. We already give you a ton of standard properties that you can use for all this stuff, so you should pretty much be covered, but you can layer in your own levels of customization however you need to. And then you're just using HubSpot's extensive workflow functionality to get either really broad or very surgical in the way that you deploy emails to these folks that have signed up for your events. Hope that helps. If you guys have any questions around pre, post, during, in-flight event comms, go ahead and post it in the comments below. We'd love to hear your use cases and stuff you've struggled with in the past, so we can show you how Event Happily can help you manage your events seamlessly on HubSpot.
And you know it was built happily.